response, were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought?
Welcome to the Author Your Brand Show. Today, I've got a very special guest on. This gentleman has 35 years of experience in real estate, corporate finance, and operations to freedom. He began his career at the Union Bank in Los Angeles, where he completed a management and credit training program. He's worked for Money Center, regional and community banks, including Chase, Union Bank, China Trust Bank. And prior to starting Freedom Financial, he co-founded and served as the COO for Partners Capital. As a fund manager, he supervised the origination of over $1.5 billion, that's billion dollars in loans, and returned just under 9% to his investors while suffering, get this guys, zero losses, zero. He serves on the board of Homes for Families, an organization dedicated to helping low-income veterans attain home ownership. And he led the process to gain approval of the Warner Center 2035 specific plan. It's the largest plan in Los Angeles. He's previously a professor at USC's prestigious Marshall School of Business, holds a BS in finance from Cal State Northridge, and an MBA from USC. Welcome to the show, best-selling author Michael Klein. How are you doing today?
Great, thank you. Thanks for having me, Doug. Appreciate
you bet. What a build-up. It's all true too, which is amazing. Good stuff. It's awesome. Michael, I'm going to just start off with what I know and what I don't know, and hopefully you can fill in the gaps here. But we've helped you work on your book and whatnot. And I was been a real estate investor at the housing and small apartment building level for many years, and so I cut my teeth on doing due diligence. And when we spoke, I thought I kind of knew what to look for, what to watch out for when investing in real estate. Then I met you. And our discussions and what's included in this book was just eye-opening, not just for real estate, but for almost any investors. It's called How to Make Sensible Investments in a Senseless Economy, which is what we have here on a macro level, and of course, micro as well. So I got you a little bit background on the resume stuff. I want to hear more about your background as an investor and helping other people invest in real estate.
Great. Well, I've primarily invested in the debt side of real estate. So I provide the debt portion of the capital needed, although sometimes in about 1/3 of the cases, we actually are providing near equity type of money. So we're providing 90, 95%, sometimes even 100% of all the money needed to do a project.
Nice.
We'll structure it as debt, but there's equity risk in that. So, the number one rule, here's the number one rule for becoming wealthy in anything that you invest in: don't lose money.
That's right. I love it.
Right? There's no simpler rule. Don't lose money. And what I found over many, many years of doing this is that people are really good at coming up with a plan A. They're very, very, very good at coming up with a plan A.
Their job, their career, their business, right?
Whatever. They come to you and they say, "Hey, I'm going to open a restaurant." You talk to them about it, and everything's going to just work. But then you ask them, "Well, so what if that doesn't work?"
Yeah.
Okay. And so the basis of the book is to try to manage through a process that you can repeat time and time again that causes you to have good answers for, well, what if that doesn't work out,
right.
and for you to have a way of dealing with it. And it for me, it's worked really well over a career that included looking at approving loans, working out loans in 4 continents, 12 different countries, a ton of different industries. It's worked each and every time. And I was thinking about it the other day. I've probably only the employers that I worked for, because in my self-employment as a fund manager for the last 12 and a half years, we haven't lost a dime, as you mentioned, but for my employers, the banks I worked for, I can only identify about $4 million of loss over $5 to $10 billion worth of loans. So it works.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's a process.
Can you quickly, for those of us who can't visualize all those numbers, what kind of percentage is that?
It's 0.00005%. I mean,
just to be sure,
really,
because when you say mentioning
really
$4 million, people don't understand what that means when you're compared to like double-digit billion dollars. That's, yeah.
It's a really tiny number. Like you wouldn't even notice it in the interest earnings over a period
It's
of time.
that small. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a really small number. And so it works. And the funny thing is I mean, I'd love to say I invented all this, but I didn't invent it. What I did do is sort of learn from a great management training program, from watching and looking at and having the opportunity to work on loans that had gone bad, observing things, but none of it's like, all that wildly original. It's just that it's all condensed into the book's like 100 pages, a bunch of it stories from a partner. And so it's an easy process to follow.
It's an easy process to read. But when I was going through it with you, I was like, well, each of those steps, you drill down very deep into most. Check out X, and you always thought, well, check out how Y relates to that. It was, it's not just checking out the track record of perhaps a contractor, but maybe his subcontractors, or you go down you spider it down into areas most people wouldn't think about.
Yeah. So I mean, the basis is it's always the same. It's always people, credit, real, and we in my world it's real estate. But gosh, you could be investing in oil and gas. So substitute the word real estate, put in oil and gas, right? And then the structure of the financing. I call it the purpose. Okay, but it's the structure of the financing. And then how are you going to get your money back? And if that doesn't work out, how are you going to get your money back?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because again, what I found is if you're working with really bright people, which is step number one, right? They are attuned to how they're going to preserve their capital. Now, if I'm the debt and they're the equity, their capital gets lost first, right?
Yeah.
And so if they're already thinking about 2 and 3 ways to keep their money safe, then I'm that much better off, right? So if I'm doing business with smart people that are really talented at what they do, I've mitigated substantially all my risk. Not all of it, but a big chunk of it, right?
Yeah.
If I'm doing business with that friend that has the idea to open a restaurant, nothing wrong with that. And you ask the question, so what do you do if you're slow for 4 months? Never mind what happens if you have COVID. I mean, forget that. I mean, right? Let's just deal with I project I'm going to do, I don't know, $1,000 a night. Well, what happens if it's 500 a night? Okay. And I, on a personal level, learned this lesson kind of the hard way. I was a brash 36-year-old banker that was on the wrong side of a merger. And so I crafted a good parachute to get out. They paid me handsomely to leave.
Yep.
And I took that money and I invested it into an auto parts distribution company. And I was brash enough to think that I could know the difference between buying low and selling high. Distribution, you buy low, you sell high, right? And that I knew the difference between a brake rotor and an ignition rotor. Okay. And I'd figure it out. Well, Mr. Hotshot, MBA, banker, hadn't lost much money over time.
Yeah.
I first of all, all my due diligence on the people side was bad. Okay. And I ended up buying it from a Fortune 500 company. It turned out that the managers I was dealing with were crooks. So the revenues were far less than what I thought they would be the day I walked in the door. And that promise to my wife was, oh, we'll be fine. We'll start making money again in about 6 months.
Yeah.
Then 18 went by, 18. So I learned a lot about people in that instance. Okay.
Yeah.
If you deal with, if you know, the old lie down with dogs, get up with fleas, you cannot ever make up for dealing with bad people. So start there.
That's a tweet right there. You know, all the numbers, all the sizzle in the world, if they're bad people, it is not going to end well. Yeah.
Bernie Madoff.
Yeah.
All of his numbers looked really good.
Yeah.
Right. Enron. Their numbers looked fantastic. Right. But as it turned out, it was bad people. Okay. And so, and I could off camera go into a list of companies that I wouldn't dare invest in. I'm not going to do that, like in this in environment. But
okay, we got the ones that are dead and buried already. We can use those as
that's right.
Yeah.
But there are those companies, and you know, and so when people lose money by investing in those companies, they should never look shocked.
Yeah, we work.
There's one. You know,
I said it. You didn't. I don't have. I'm not having fiduciary relationship with anybody in that. Talking. Okay, I read about that one. That's pretty funny.
Yeah. So anyway, that's probably the biggest lesson.
So that's interesting because it does show like, yeah, you know, we're young and energetic, and we, you know, may had one good run. Oh, let's do it again. I've been there. You know, I bought a subdivision off eBay once. You know, I'm hotshot real estate investor. I had a good track record. I did my due diligence, and you know, when I got down there after closing, I'm like, the rents aren't exactly what they said they were. You know, it's
right.
It does can catch up with you. So I get that. All right. So you cut your teeth in that stuff, you built it up, but I was just so fascinated with the depth of your due diligence. I think it is remarkable because I've seen plenty of checklists and charts and books and this stuff. And you may say you've collated other people's stuff, but you package it up, I think, very well, not just for, like you said, not just for your real estate or your debt side, but I could take out the word real estate or debt financing and drop in almost anything. When you, if you don't mind asking, you or maybe your partners or friends, when they invest in other things, do they refer to this checklist at all?
My partners and I do. I hope people that have read the book are. I believe they are. I know our largest investors are. They spend a lot of time on people, and the background and track record, it's the essence of everything. I just, you know, it's funny. There's a lot of people in my world of real estate debt that say that they're asset-based lenders. Okay, they invest. They feel their loan's secure as long as they're at X loan value. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
And they pay no attention. They pay no attention to the people. Okay.
Wow.
All right. So if you don't think real estate takes talented people, I think you're mistaken. Okay, because everyone, no matter where you are in the world, you can walk by just in your neighborhood or in any neighborhood, a house that is immaculate, and you know, unless there's a really strong homeowners association, you can easily find one in that same neighborhood that is not immaculate. It has nothing to do with the real estate. It has everything to do with the people. Okay, and so I don't invest in hospitality, but most people have experience staying in hotels, and the hotel business is all people. It's a people business, okay? Because you can have a 150 square foot room that is an amazing experience, and you could have a 5,000 square foot room that's terrible, you know. And so it's all about the care and attention to detail
Yeah.
and training that the ownership managers put into their people, and how that translates into your experience as a consumer of that hotel product or restaurant product, or on and on and on. It doesn't matter.
It's funny. You're making me think about this now. And I know when a young man going to buy my first car, and my grandfather said, "Go check out the guy's garage." And if his garage was organized, which is rare, but if it was, the car's going to be okay. He's going to maintain it. I'm like, oh, that's a good idea. And then when I started investing in houses, whatnot, they taught me to, or no, when I was going to interview tenants, sometimes I would like go to their current place, say, "Hey, I just want to come by and say hi. Can I use the bathroom real quick?" Go right to the bathroom to see how they maintain their current place. So, yeah, because people can say a lot of things on their resume or their loan app and all the things, but how they live their life has a lot to do with it. I think that's.
Oh yeah, no, I think it's interesting. I find being a real estate junkie, I'll look at ads online for various parts around the country. Oh, would it be fun to have a vacation home here or there? That sort of stuff. And I'll go through, and it's amazing to me what the insides of some properties look like inside, and others. Sometimes it's amazingly good, and sometimes it's amazingly bad. There's a lot in between. Don't get me wrong, but you just sort of wonder, right? So I just that when it comes to your example about being landlord and housekeeping, we don't check that depth of people, but we do look at how they've maintained their housekeeping with respect to how they pay their bills.
Yep.
And here's the real test. The real test is, and we haven't had a real test for a while. We haven't had a real test for a dozen years. But when we do have a real test, people get into trouble. It just, it's going to happen. And that's when you really find out. See, I would say that COVID didn't test us in a financial way.
I don't get it. We could talk about this for a little bit because you're a financial guy, and I have other people in these spaces. I'm like, okay, so the economy, this pandemic hit, no one's working. Did the government just prop up stuff so much that real estate kept going up? Is that what happened in 2020? Because everybody I talked to is making money or gaining equity in their residences and they're investing.
Yeah. So I wish I had the answer, and I think anybody who pretends to have the answer should be you should be careful listening to.
That's a good answer.
Okay. Because we're sort of in we're in kind of uncharted territory. There's nobody that's alive today that was an adult that was alive for 1918 in that pandemic.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the way that was managed somewhat differently. Yeah, we went through this shutdown, and we still have, 12 million people not working, and we've got unemployment in certain places like California, where I'm sitting right today. It's 7.5%. Now, when I go home to Arizona, it'll be 3.5%. Interesting. Arizona is no longer paying huge unemployment. Everybody's had to go back to work.
Yeah.
Okay. We have labor shortages all over.
Right.
And there's people sitting at home unemployed. So it's a mess. And I think what we're experiencing right now, and again, I want to preface this by saying I think, and I don't know, I'm guessing, is that we're in this weird quasi world of capitalism meets socialism. And so we've got all this government support stuff going into a capitalistic sort of model.
Yeah.
And the confluence of those two things is driving asset bubbles, because money's easy and cheap. And those people that were deemed essential or could work from home, and which is the most cruel thing to do, is to call somebody non-essential.
Oh,
But
man, yeah.
but there's nothing more cruel. But those people all made money.
Yeah.
They all made money, right? And then interest rates, they fell again today. You can get a mortgage at 2.5%. So what's going to happen to a house that was once predicated on a 5% mortgage, which once was predicated on a 10% mortgage, which was at one very brief period of time was a 15% mortgage, right? So and those people who have assets, their assets have all gone up in value because of the lowering of interest rates and the printing them. It just so right now it's a mess, and it's really hard to predict. But it's always hard to predict the future, right? I think and what is that? Yogi Berra, I'm going to paraphrase, was famous for saying something like, "It's difficult to make predictions, especially when it's about the future," right? So paraphrasing, but I be wary of anyone that makes statements in absolute terms about what's going to happen a minute from now.
Yeah. Okay. That's valuable information, which brings me to, I have got two big questions. I'll start with the curious one first, because you're involved with most of your debt that you're creating here with investors is for retail, strip malls, things like that, right?
So it's a commercial in the sense that we don't deal with consumers. Okay, it tends to be right now our concentrations are in retail buildings and apartment buildings.
Okay.
And our third most popular category would be industrial buildings.
Mm-hmm.
That isn't by design. That's by where the opportunities happen to be.
Fair enough.
The design part is that we find the smartest people we can to do business with. They just happen to be in those product types.
Big pause on that statement, folks. Listen to that. It's not the property. It's always the mind behind it, because the smart people, whatever a smart person does, if they have good track record, it can probably work out, is the point here, right?
Right. Yeah. Now, and thankfully, my partners and I have quite a bit of experience in a handful of real estate verticals.
Mm-hmm.
So apartments and retail and industrial, and office and single family developments. So where large tracts are being built.
Is it mostly new construction?
We will finance new construction. We'll finance reconstruction, repositioning. So anywhere where there's value being added. We don't do rescue loans. We don't do stuff where it's stabilized and boring, and that's for somebody else. And there's plenty of people for doing that. Mm-hmm. And the specialty, my specialty, is knowing if somebody, reading and understanding whether somebody knows what they're talking about when it comes to adding value to an industrial building, or taking a retail center and repositioning it, and taking something that somebody else had let. I'll give you an example. We have one in the portfolio at the moment where our client bought it. Let's call it 90,000 square feet to keep the numbers fairly straight, and he bought it with only 30,000 square feet leased, and 60,000 square feet vacant. Okay. And that's what somebody did to that center, right? Because the center didn't start off that way. Right. It became that way over time. Okay. And so what our customer did while in escrow to buy it, found a 40,000 foot tenant. Mm-hmm. For the big space, and then renewed a couple of other leases in it, and then looked at the site plan and decided he's literally tearing down about 10,000 square feet, actually 12,000 square feet.
Yeah.
So when it's all done, it'll be 78,000 square feet instead of 90,000 square feet, and it'll be about 94% leased.
Perfect.
6 months, and that'll be about 6 months from now. Okay, that has nothing to do with real estate. That has everything to do with the talent.
Yep.
Right. It's all about the talent. So, and everybody will say, "Oh, retail's bad." No, retail is bad if you're not a great operator.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Look, Sears is a great story of being outflanked by somebody that just made electronic their business plan. All Jeff Bezos did with Amazon was recreate Sears in an electronic format.
Mm-hmm.
Because Sears was written about at the turn of the last century, dislocating stores on Main Street because of their catalog. What was a catalog? A catalog was a big bounded paper thing that when I was a kid, we always enjoyed when it came to look through, right? But at the end of the day, what was Amazon?
Online catalog, right?
Online catalog.
Much bigger than Sears one. Although to Sears' credit, my neighbor bought a house from the Sears catalog. And I don't think I saw it. And he had a picture of the catalog, and I was sitting in a frame in his house. I'm like, oh my God, it's a Sears house.
Yeah, Sears house. But I don't think Jeff Bezos has gotten there, or whoever's now taken over. But they did announce just the other day that they're going to open a department store.
I saw
what
that.
Did Sears do? So what did Sears do? So Sears went from a dry goods store to a catalog to being a catalog fulfillment center to becoming department stores.
Right.
What's Amazon doing? Amazon has its own brands. I mean, all that happened to Sears was they got out Sears by Amazon.
Right.
And that was a people talent thing. Okay. One guy was interested in domineering the retail space, and the other guy was interested in domineering the financial space.
Yeah.
They both became wealthy.
Yeah.
But one destroyed a company and the other one built a great company. Right.
Yep.
So again, it's people. So people, credit, real estate, or oil and gas, or companies like Sears, or companies like Amazon, right? And then are they going to be capitalized right for whatever their business plan is?
Yeah.
And then do you have two ways to get your money back without losing any money?
I love that part.
If you can answer those 6 questions, then why not? Why not invest? Now, of course, in the book, there's a bunch of layers of detail that help explain all of those things, so that you have a better idea of how to make that all work.
Right. Yeah. I'm really curious about mainly the retail and industrial office things. Have you seen anything that's like surprisingly creative in the past couple of years that somebody has done that's like, oh wow, that's a really good idea to revamp it or repurpose it or make it attractive, given that value add?
Well, yeah. So we recently, I don't know, 6 months ago, we did a fairly large transaction where our client bought 3 hotels, all within about 7 blocks of each other in a relatively small town, 60,000 person small town. That was incredibly housing short, and is converting all of the units into single apartments, so efficiency apartments.
Yeah.
And what they're able to do is create apartments that people that have the jobs in the lower pay scales can afford to have a roof over their head.
Nice.
It's hugely important. Dignified housing for everyone that they can afford without government subsidy.
Wow, good for him. He should get some press out of that. That's a really, obviously make money, but also help out the economy. That's good.
Yeah, no, he's gotten a lot of press out of it, and in fact, what cities are contacting him all over his part of the country and saying, hey, would you take a look at this hotel? It's not doing so well.
Right.
Because they have a desire to make sure that there's housing for their community, and it's a great way of taking something that already exists, already has lots of plumbing, already has lots of electrical,
Yeah.
and converting it. So I think that that's a pretty creative reuse, of something. It's not super unique, but it's done. There's there's a lot of detail to making that work. There's a lot of moving parts, but once you get all those moving parts to work, it's pretty phenomenal. Another interesting one is where somebody does something as simple as break up a project. So as an example, a client purchased this retail deal, a small center that had been held by the same ownership for decades. And there was a falling out between the two partners, and it had to sell. It needed to sell in like 28 days. And he got the call because he had the reputation for being decisive. And then we got the call from him because we have a reputation for being decisive.
Nice.
And so, 2 days later, I think I was down there looking at the site with him and going over everything. And anyway, it looked like a great deal. And it turned out it was a really good deal. He bought a retail center. This happened 8 months ago at a 9% cap rate, which means a 9% return on the total investment. And in a world of 6 and 7% returns.
Right, it's pretty good.
And he was able to do that because he could commit quickly. There was a unique need to sell, but that wasn't the big value creation. Okay, yeah, he stole it, so to speak. Okay, I always love when I get the call, I stole it, so I should be able to borrow more. Well, no. But that wasn't the steal. That was a really good buy. That was like many years ago. I bought a new car that the dealership was going out of business, and the manufacturer had a rebate on it, and it was I think it was a $22,000 car originally, and I bought it for $14,000. Okay, great deal, right? Yeah. But so it was one of those deals. Okay, you get to drive it for free for a year. But where the real money was made was that there was an out parcel that had a Wendy's that had been operating there for 40 years. Okay. And it had about 3 years left on the lease. And that parcel, it was all a part of the shopping center. So in the last 6 months, what they worked on doing was twofold: get the lease extended out for 20 years. Which they did. Yep. And which becomes much more valuable than a 3-year lease. Sure. Yeah. And then go to the city and split the project into two: the retail center and the Wendy's. Okay. And so they've basically sold the Wendy's for about 75% of what they paid for the entire center.
Love it.
And then they're in the process of getting a permanent long-term loan from a life insurance company. Yeah. On the balance, where they pay us off in full and put like $1 million in their pocket, and and it's just that's a real lift, and that has nothing to do with the real estate. That had everything to do with the people. Creativity. The real estate was just sitting there.
Yeah. I always said deals are not found, they're created. You're not going to find things, that you got to create it. And obviously he saw that. Man, we could go on forever. I want to close out with my crystal ball question, because I know you're wise enough not to know all the answers, and that's good. But you mentioned that we haven't really been tested yet, and we're supposed to have these recessions in 7-year cycles or whatever it is, and what's it been? Almost double that. 12?
Yeah. 12 and a half. I mean, well, look, they're going to say those people that keep track of recessions said that the COVID, shutdown recession was the shortest recession on record,
which was count. 2 months. Always saw with the prices, it went up.
I don't think it counts. I think when we have a liquidity event, that's when we get tested,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
When some segment that everybody thinks is here forever disappears, like the whole mortgage-backed security market for residential mortgages goes away, or the entire savings and loan industry that was financing most apartments in the United States goes away. When you have that sort of event, then you really get the test, and you really get to find out, how good is how good's your fortress.
Yeah. So, we're both, keep our ear to the ground on these things, but I keep going back to, okay, so I'm a positive guy, trying to be cautious as well. And I keep looking at this, my dad was saying the other day, oh yeah, well, they're borrowing in my kids' future. I'm like, Dad, the amount of money they printed, it doesn't matter anymore. It's like, it's not even real. They print up so much of this paper, there's no way to pay it back. Forget it. It's over. You could take away all the wealth of everybody on the planet and not pay off our debt, right? I mean, it's insurmountable with the unfunded liabilities. It's what it is, several $100 trillion. I mean, are we going to have buckets of cash and wheelbarrows? Is what I want to know. Do I need to buy gold or buy some seeds and a gun in the mountains?
So should I tell you about my off-the-grid house? No, I'm just joking.
Don't tell me about it. We don't want to know about it. It's secret.
Yeah, with the bunker. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. That if I lose sleep over things, that's one of the things I lose sleep over. The United States at the end of World War II had debt levels that were similar to where we are now, and we worked our way out.
As a percentage of GDP?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and we worked our way out of it, but we had also blown up all of our competitors. So we had 20-year head start on everybody when we did that. So we had 20 really good years because all the manufacturing might of the rest of the world had literally been destroyed in World War II. And today we have a really different set of circumstances. We've outsourced so much of of what we can do to China.
Yep.
Okay. I mean, I find it ironic that COVID came from China, and we'll go into how it came from China. That's a whole different story. I don't want to even go there. But
okay.
And then we're completely reliant on China for our masks that don't work. Or our PPE for the medical profession, none of it was made here. None. I mean, essentially none of it.
Yeah. And a lot of our medicines too, right?
Substantially all of our pharmaceuticals aren't made here. So the difference between now and World War II was we were making everything. Okay. And so we were producing product that would cause us to generate the monies necessary to pay down debt, right?
Yep, right.
We've sent that off to China, and in the old theory that having all these friendly relationships with China was going to cause them to be more like us backfired. I think it's fair to say, so I'm not sure how we unwind it, and that's a troubling thought for me because the other thing that's happened in COVID. Look, in this 20 months of COVID, we've learned a lot of things. Some of them challenging, really challenging. For example, Canada, New Zealand, and Australia had been ranked in the top 10 most free countries in the world.
Right. And now
I would argue that they've shown that they're among the top 10 most authoritarian type countries in the world. Yeah. And not a second thought about just shutting down everybody and taking away their ability to do anything or whatever. So freedom's fleeting, and unless you pay close attention, and you can disappear in a heartbeat. So I don't know what the alternatives are, because you've got China, that their economy is dependent on us buying their junk. You know,
Well,
we've got to buy their stuff, right?
It started out that way, but what I read years ago, this is old information, but their middle class exceeded our entire population.
Oh, sure.
So
Sure.
you know, we are a big customer, but I'm not sure if we're their biggest customer. I don't know.
I don't think we're their biggest customer.
Yeah.
I think so. So how we work our way through this, I don't know. I think it's one of the reasons. It's actually one of the reasons I'm not insanely worried about inflation.
Yeah.
Because the debt's really deflationary. It tends to hold back economies. And so we don't have a demographic problem that would lead to inflation. So, you know, when you and I were kids, we had a demographic issue that caused inflation. It was called a baby boom,
Right.
coupled with a near doubling of the workforce, because for the first time in, you know, generations, our female colleagues joined the workforce.
Yeah.
And so instead of just absorbing a large male population, the baby boom, we had to absorb into the economy now a male and female population that wanted a job, and we're competing for those jobs. And so what you notice is that house prices fully absorbed that, i.e., housing went from being affordable for one to affordable for two, and it's just microeconomics 101, right? If there's 3 apples on the table, and you have 3 buyers, there's one price. If you have 2 buyers, there's a lower price. If you have 6 buyers, the price goes up.
Yeah. Basically. Yeah.
You know, and so I don't see that pressure today either.
Yeah.
So I wish I could tell you I knew. I don't.
Yeah.
I'm conflicted on it because there's lots of threats. I think but that being said, because I don't want to get too depressing here, but wherever there's threats, there's opportunities.
Yes,
Okay.
there was a silver lining is a real thing. I totally believe that.
Right.
That's, I guess my one point on that is like, yeah, we can't. I don't think comparing manufacturing economies to today's economy is probably even the same chessboard, because there's so much value being created digitally that we're still learning how that actually works. I'm not sure because you can't make it in a factory doesn't mean it's not valuable, right? I mean,
No.
I talked to a guy earlier today who had some software experience, sold his company, and what are going to do this money? Oh, let's start a new company. He went from 0 to $150 million in 4 years with some medical software. So there's more to it than just making, you know, guns and butter. You know?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely, and how that and that's why the United States still has a large GDP. Look, like I said, I'm sitting in California at the moment, right, which has got a huge GDP, and nobody works. Yeah, so far, and nobody works. You know, everybody's walking around in flip flops. You know, so what did they do all day? You know, I mean, somewhere they're coding something, I guess.
I was there for a couple of years. I never understood being in the 405 at 2 in the afternoon. Like, why are you guys working somewhere? It's just nuts.
Yeah, right. Why is there traffic all the time? But there's a big GDP here, and you know, while some of it's stuff that you can physically see, there's still a lot of manufacturing here. But there's also a lot of agriculture that you can see.
Right.
But there's a ton of technology that you can't see, and for just a simpleton like me, I don't even know that I can understand it. But so the world's changing anyway.
I won't ask you where your cabin is in the woods. We won't go down that rabbit hole, and I won't be stockpiling gold, because I love your statement about this. Every threat, there's also an opportunity. It was proven during the Depression. It proved by the guys who were smart enough to navigate the pre-2008 stuff. So we'll talk about that another time. I'd love to actually chat with you about what we could do to help people not prepare, but just get the mindset and the wisdom to to be able to cope with inevitable changes they cannot predict. It's probably the best way to put it.
Okay, love
Yeah.
to do that.
So the book, folks, the book is a definite winner. One of my all-time favorites. I've given it to people already. How to make sensible investments in a senseless economy. It's 6 proven steps to prevent financial disaster by Michael Klein and Stanley Kafka. Brilliant men who know how to run the money game. So thank you for your time, Michael. I appreciate it. And we'll talk to you real soon.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, and we're out.